Hey guys, so today we're going to talk about two words that should be pretty familiar to us. We learned about them last year, we reviewed them this year, but I find that a lot of times people use these words interchangeably, almost as if the words mean the same thing, and they're not. They are two different words and they mean two very different things. And those two words are perspective and point of view. So today, before we review these two words and make sure that we truly do understand the difference between each of these words, I want you to think about how you would respond if someone came up to you and asked you, what does perspective mean and what is point of view? So take a couple seconds to kind of collect your thoughts, pause the video, and think about what your answer would be to describe each of these two terms. Okay. Let's start with point of view first. Last year and this year, we learned that point of view is who's telling the story. It has to do with pronouns. So when we're reading a story, we need to pay attention to the pronouns that are being used. For example, if we're reading a story and the words I and me and we, us, our, if those words are being used, then we know that that story is being written from the first person point of view. If we read words like he, she, they, them, then we know that that's third person. And if the narrator is talking directly to us, the reader, and saying things like, you are going to love this story, or hey reader, are you ready for an adventure? Then we know that that's second person. So point of view is who's telling the story. Perspective, on the other hand, is how a character sees what's happening to them. It's their view on what's happening. And perspective is different for every character in the story, and that's okay. I'll give you an example. Over break, I did an activity with my niece, and I showed her this picture. And I said, what do you see? And she said, oh, I see balloons. And I said, well, I see a star. And she kind of looked at me and she's like, no, I see balloons. And I said, well, I see a star. And she said, well, I see 3 balloons. One's red, one's blue, and one's green. And I said, well, I see a blue star. And we went back and forth like that for a minute or two until I finally showed her this. And she said, so that's what you saw. And that's perspective. Neither one of us were wrong. I mean, this is truly what she saw and this is what I saw. That's, no one's wrong with that. But again, perspective is what you see based on, what you actually see or based on your experiences. But every person has a different perspective. Another example is I was reading a story over break that was set in Europe during World War II. And there were 2 main characters in the story. One was a 15-year-old girl living in Paris, and her city and country were just about to be invaded by the German Nazis. The second character in the story was a 15-year-old boy who joined the Nazis to fight for his country. Each of their perspectives about what was happening in their world was very, very different. She was upset and angry at the Nazis and worried about her family and her friends and herself, whereas he was excited and really, eager to do what he can to fight for his country and to fight for this group that he believed in. So for them, that was what they thought, that's what they believed, and that was what their experience taught them. So that's their perspective. So again, these two words, sometimes they're brought up together, but they mean two very different things. Point of view, who's telling the story, first, second, or third person, and then perspective, how a character within a story views what's happening around them or to them. All right. As we work on this writing project for the next week, we're going to be really using that word perspective and focusing on perspective in our writing and in the story that we read.